It was the campaign pledge candidate Donald Trump repeated most.
And Mexico will pay for the wall.
Last August, candidate Trump called Mexico's president a friend, but Enrique Peña Nieto canceled a February meeting with President Trump over growing differences. The border wall, coupled with the threat of mass deportations, leaves a population in fear. 11 million undocumented workers in the United States, 10% here in Los Angeles. Today on Eyewitness Newsmakers, the Consul General of Mexico in Los Angeles, Carlos García de Alba. We will talk about NAFTA and trade between Los Angeles and Mexico, and the consulate's new advocacy center providing legal assistance and counseling and new help for those who have been deported.
ABC 7 presents Eyewitness Newsmakers with Adrienne Alpert.
Good morning, I'm Adrienne Alpert, and my guest for this program is Consul General Carlos García de Alba, Mexico's Consul General in Los Angeles. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
After a 30-year career as a diplomat, I have to say that considering what is being said in Washington, this must be a time to test the soul of any diplomat.
Well, it's challenging, for sure. But when you are a career diplomat, you have to be open to any challenge. And when my bosses told me about this destination, I immediately realized that it was complicated, not just for the time, but also for the circumstances. You know, Los Angeles is the largest Mexican community living permanently out of Mexico, and that itself is a very challenging thing. But no, after 30 years, you get used to challenges, and I have to say, even if the times are not easy, I'm very happy to serve my country in this amazing, vibrant city.
You had been in Ireland for about 5 years and were on your way to the United Arab Emirates when you got the word that you were coming to Los Angeles.
Good point. Well, I was informed in February last year that my next destiny was Abu Dhabi, the capital of the Emirates. And then 2 months later, when I was ready to go to the Emirates, my bosses called me and said, Carlos, there is a light change. You don't go east, you go west. And listen, I was delighted. I feel really flattered to be in one of the top positions for the Mexican Foreign Service is a true privilege.
This is the largest consulate in the United States from Mexico.
In the world.
In the world?
Yes.
Let's talk about the population here. There are millions of Mexican-American citizens. We don't know exactly how many, but undocumented, perhaps as many as 1 million in the Los Angeles area?
Something like that. Not all Mexicans, but I mean, speaking about demographics, you know, Los Angeles is the largest, the most populated county and the wealthiest country in the USA. We estimate that roughly 30% of the total population of the country is Hispanic. But born and raised Mexicans in the county of Los Angeles, there is roughly 1 million of Mexican citizens. That is a very important population.
There are some new directives that your consulate now has in light of some of the policies coming out of Washington. Later in this program, we're going to be talking specifically about them. We're going to give a phone number where people may be able to call if they need help, because your mission has somewhat changed. But let's talk about some of the top headlines that we have. We started this program with the idea of the wall. They're taking the bids now on some 200 firms that are reportedly bidding on it, 2,000 miles from San Diego to Brownsville, Texas. There's discussion about what it would cost, $15 billion perhaps, as much as closer to $40 billion. And of course, as you know, one way or another, the president wants to see Mexico pay for it. Though now the statements have changed a bit, whether it be an outright cash up front or whether it be some tariffs, whether it be imposing some kind of tax on people sending their incomes back into Mexico. In one way or the other, he says he's going to collect that money.
Well, the position clearly and more than once expressed by my government is absolutely clear. No way. Mexico won't pay for the wall. if the U.S. government decides to build a wall, it's up to any country to decide this kind of physical barriers. We won't pay, the government won't pay for that. If the American government decides to try Mexicans, speaking about people and not governments, to pay for that is a different story. There could be those kind of possibilities, a border tariff for Mexican exports.
A visa tariff?
Could be a visa application tariff, could be a tax for remittances, but that is not that easy. Because suppose that you want to put a tax on remittances, it has to be universal. And it's not just Mexicans who send remittances to their countries. You have Chinese people, you have Filipinos, you have Salvadorians, you have Brazilians, you have many different nationalities sending remittances to their countries. So at the end, it won't be just Mexicans paying for that. It will be many more nationalities paying for that wall. So I think it's a very complicated way to make foreigners to pay for the wall. But it's not the way to build a positive relationship. As I always say, by geography, we have been, we are, and we will be neighbors. But to be neighbors doesn't automatically imply to be friends. Mexico and the U.S. became friends along the time. And then, from being friends to be partners is a different story. And we have been partners, good partners, for several years. And then, the fourth step, Adrienne, from partners to be allies is another important step. And Mexico and the U.S. have been able to build a relationship that is a great partnership, and we are clearly allies in many different topics.
One of the greatest tests and one of the greatest proofs of that alliance is the fact that we still have the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, which is coming up for renegotiation. That also includes Canada. Now we see headlines that say that Mexico is now going to start looking elsewhere for corn, and as you know, that is a huge export. There is much money made in the United States on corn, a great staple of Mexico. Yes. We don't need to go into it deeply. We all know this. Do you think that's a legitimate hammer to be holding over?
Well, we need to be prepared. I mean, every country has always a plan B or a plan C. We don't want that. We are doing very good businesses with many American business people in different sectors. But in the case of corn, ask the farmers from Iowa or Nebraska what are the thoughts about the possibility of losing a very important market. I think it's not a good idea. And we don't need retaliation, we don't need a trade war. We need to grow up NAFTA. That free trade agreement has proved to be convenient for the three countries that are part of that.
Well, the president believes that the balance of trade is unfair, that more money is going in, that the United States doesn't get enough from that trade agreement, that more than 50 million, 60 million, billion,
Adrienne,
excuse me.
Adrienne, Mexico has the fourth largest superavit with the U.S. Before Mexico, you have China with 360 billion US dollars, 6 times bigger than Mexico has, with no free trade agreement. There is no NAFTA with China. So the problem is not NAFTA, clearly. It's a matter of cost, technology, and that's the way we need to approach NAFTA. We need the three countries to understand that we are a region. If we see ourselves as a region, we should be and we can be the most competitive region in the world.
Does your plan B finally, though, take into account the contingency, the possibility that the president would just say, President Trump would say, this is unworkable and we're walking away?
Well, that would be, I think, a very extreme and inconvenient negative decision, because it means NAFTA is over, let's go to the World Trade Organization. In that case, Mexico will pay the biggest tariff, 3.5%. That is not that bad for Mexico. The U.S. should pay more than 3.5% exporting to Mexico according to the rules of the World Trade Organization. So it's much better to work through NAFTA than the World Trade Organization.
All right, they're telling us we have to take a break. Mr. Consul General, we will take a break. We'll be back with many more questions about sanctuary states, sanctuary city, and what you can do if you need to call someone. Coming up.
You're watching Eyewitness Newsmakers.
We are back with Consul General Carlos García de Alba from Mexico to offices in the United States in Los Angeles, talking about policies that affect citizens of Mexico, sanctuary cities. The move afoot to perhaps make California all of a sanctuary state. One of the interesting things Mayor Garcetti asked the feds to define was, what is a sanctuary city? What policies here have been is, we arrest everyone, we hold on to them, but we're not going to hold them for deportation for ICE. What do you say to your citizens as far as their rights, or what can you advise them?
Well, actually, as a matter of fact, the first time I heard Mayor Garcetti speaking about this topic was in Mexico City, when I was with him last December. And a Mexican journalist asked him, the Los Angeles city, the city council, is in favor to be a sanctuary city, and he clearly said what you said. What is the definition of a sanctuary city? And what is the definition, maybe, of a sanctuary state? Nobody knows exactly what are the legal terms. The concept is clear. It's, let's say, a welcoming city to migrants, documented or not documented. What is clear in this case, Adrienne, is that we don't interfere in domestic politics and policies. So for the Mexican consulate, it's a very respectful debate. Some are in favor, some oppose, but in this case, we just follow the debate and don't interfere at all in domestic politics.
One of the agreements, I mean, we will have many people watching this program saying people are here illegally, they should not be here illegally, no matter what, they've broken the law, they need to leave. Others take the stance, what they would support is the immediate deportation of those who are convicted felons, people who are being held on violent crime. What does Mexico do with them when they're deported?
Well, nowadays we have a specific program called Somos Mexicanos that starts from this side of the border. You are deported, or there are also cases, I want to return myself to Mexico. I don't want to live here. It's time for me to return to live in Mexico. In both cases, we provide the assistance, the advice, and the help in order to make as smoother as possible the return of these people.
This would be a good time to talk about the fact that the consulate has inaugurated an advocacy center that will serve the Mexican community. We have a phone number that we can put on the screen, and that phone number is 855-463-6395. Who answers this phone, and what's this for?
Thank you for that information. This is a very professional call center based in Tucson, Arizona. It's in the Mexican consulate in Tucson, and is a net of 41 attorneys that give advice to any kind of question. It can be about migration, but it can be about family, civil rights. It can be about civil matters in general. In that case, you get the professional and safe and reliable information. And I want to stress this. Nowadays, you have lots of people that bluff. And it's not the case to go to those sources.
Our city attorney is going after those scams really hard. The people who are pretending to be counselors for citizenship,
yes,
and giving false advice, taking lots of money. What's your advice to people who are trying to get through the system?
To go to the reliable sources, including the telephone number of the Centro de Información y Asistencia Mexicanos, or to the consulate. We are the reliable source of information, whatever kind of question you have, please go to reliable sources. And this center that we just opened a few weeks ago is working well, And actually, it's not new. The legal services that we provide are quite old, but now we extend it. We are closing later, we are opening earlier, and we are also providing legal services out of the consulate. The outreach has increased a lot in the last weeks.
There's so much being said about the fear in the community. Here, let's just focus on Los Angeles. High schools reporting drops in attendance. Children fearful that when they come home, their mother or their father will not be there. What to do if a parent is deported? Do you give that kind of counseling service too?
No. I mean, this is a very sad situation. To be fearful doesn't help. The case is to get the information, to collect the information, and to be prepared in case of necessity. Either, once again, you are deported or you decide to return to Mexico by yourself. The question with fear is that you stop sending your children to school. It's not fair. You decide to come to the U.S. because you are looking for the American dream. That's not the American dream. So you need to be informed, but not in fear. And one more thing. The fear is because people think that there are massive raids here and there 24 hours. It's not the truth. It's not reality. According to the hard data that we have had up to now less detainees and deported people than we used to have in the last years. So it's just perception. It's not information.
Well, I can remember some of the workplace raids in the 70s that would go through the factories, and they would be frightening to see.
It has not been the case. So fearful in this case is not answering to reality. It's just a perception. We need...
But you know, President Trump is promising this sort of thing.
Yes, we understand that. But in the meantime, there is not even the capacity to make massive raids. So take it easy. It's time to collect information, not to be in panic. It doesn't help to be in panic.
All right, we're going to have to take a break right here. Consul General, we will ask for more calming words from you coming up right after this.
You're watching Eyewitness Newsmakers.
We are back talking to Mexico's Consul General in Los Angeles. One of the things that people are doing here is looking for jobs. To that end, the consulate is organizing a financial education week. And what does that do for folks?
We organize once a year, all the Mexican consulates in the U.S., a week of financial education. It means to give advice to Mexicans living here in many different fields. How to declare your taxes, how to get a credit or a mortgage, or how to protect your savings, or for a housekeeper, how to make a healthier and cheaper budget in order to feed your family in a better way. There are many different topics. How to open a saving account. This is a big challenge. Just to give you a specific information, just 26% of the Mexicans in the U.S. have a saving account. It means most of the people save their money in their pockets, in their houses, and they don't put the money in the bank. So this week of financial education goes to that, to develop entrepreneurial mentality, to insert more people in the mainstream doing businesses and taking advantage of the savings. Those are some of the objectives of this event that we organize once a year.
And once again, let's put up on our screen the phone number that people can call if they do need legal assistance in any of this, correct? But again, what do you say? There are many people, again, watching this saying, folks are here illegally. They shouldn't be getting any support or any services that has anything to do with us at all.
Well, just to share more information, Mexicans in the U.S. pay roughly $90 billion of taxes per year. They pay taxes. To be undocumented in this country doesn't mean that you don't pay taxes. You pay equally taxes. And they get roughly $5 billion out of services. So you see the proportion of taxes paid and services that people get. So people are contributing to the American economy, to the welfare of this amazing country. So people need to know that Mexicans living here with no papers are contributing to the American economy, and they represent 8% of the American GDP, equivalent to the GDP of countries like Korea or Australia. That's the size of the Mexican contribution to the American economy.
And finally, coming back around again on this conversation, because I think it's interesting when we look at the NAFTA talks that'll be coming up very soon. You know the individual from Mexico will be sitting on the Mexican side of the table?
Oh, yes. Minister Ildefonso Guajardo, well, he was my boss some years ago when we both worked for the Ministry for Foreign Affairs, is a very professional person. He has been in charge of this ministry for the 4 years and more.
So you say he's a good qualified person to be talking to?
Absolutely, and not just that. He's very well supported by the Mexican entrepreneurship, and also the team that negotiated NAFTA some years ago. All of those guys are still there. That's a big advantage. I think Mexico has a very good team, and I'm sure the American side and the Canadian as well. It will be a very good negotiation, but the purpose is to upgrade NAFTA, not to eliminate NAFTA.
Let's see what happens. Consul General Carlos Garcia de Alba, thank you so much for joining us.
On the contrary, Adrienne, it has been a real pleasure to be here for the first time.
Okay, come back again. We'll have plenty to talk about.
Thank you.
Eyewitness Newsmakers will be right back.